After the recent celebrations in Berlin to mark the fall of the wall, the spotlight now turns to Prague, where they're marking 20 years since the start of the so-called Velvet Revolution. There'll be a recreation of the student march, whose brutal suppression by riot police led to mass demonstrations across the former Czechoslovakia and the eventual fall of the regime. Rob Cameron looks back at those momentous few weeks in Prague.
We didn't know what was going to happen, where it's going to lead, but everybody who was attending this knew clearly that, we have to try and change things.
Early evening, November 17th, 1989. A crowd of several thousand students broke away from an officially sanctioned demonstration and marched to the centre of Prague to demand freedom and democracy. They were stopped by a cordon of riot police, their white helmets glinting in the night. Mirek Boháč was in the crowd that evening.
The police started pushing from both sides. I was close to the back. There were actually armored vehicles with fences mounted on top of them, and there were police wearing helmets and shields and clubs, and they started pushing from both sides, and suddenly people began to realize that this was basically a trap. And once this started happening, people started panicking because they didn't know where this was going to go.
The communist authorities were thrown off course by the size of the demonstration. This police radio recording gives a sense of the confusion that night as police commanders struggled to control the crowd. Shortly after 8 p.m, the riot police attacked, and false rumours that one of the students had been killed spread like wildfire. Over the next few days, hundreds of thousands of ordinary people attended mass demonstrations. The non-violent revolution was coordinated by Civic Forum, a hastily formed group of students and intellectuals who opposed the regime. On November 24th, exactly 1 week after the student protest, the group called a press conference to make the following astonishing announcement.
Czechoslovak television announced
že všichni členové předsednictva UVKSČ a sekretariátu UVKSČ dávají své funkce k dispozici.
The entire Communist Party leadership had resigned. Czechoslovakia's communist system, in power since 1948, was on the verge of collapse, and Civic Forum were filling the vacuum. The man who made that announcement was Jiří Černý, a music critic and journalist who'd been drafted in as Civic Forum's impromptu spokesman.
Everyone felt something in the air, but nobody in the press conference knew what would happen. So when they listened to it, it seemed to me they all went crazy, especially the Czech ones.
Standing beside Jiří Černý that night was the man who'd been pushed into the limelight as Civic Forum's unofficial leader, the playwright and dissident Václav Havel. The two had been friends for 30 years. Now the unimaginable was happening. Within 4 weeks, Jiří's school friend had been propelled to power and was being sworn in as president of Czechoslovakia.
Slibuji na svou čest a svědomí věrnost Československé socialistické republice.
That was December the 29th, 1989. A lot has happened since. Václav Havel served as president for 13 years and saw Czechoslovakia split into two. When I met the former president at his modest office in the centre of Prague, I asked him whether he felt the Velvet Revolution had fulfilled its promise.
The fundamental changes have happened. We've got freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, political plurality. We've got free elections. The economy was privatized. All that is good. but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm satisfied with the current situation. Far from it.
November 17th is now a public holiday, and many Czechs will celebrate the very real achievements of this country over the last 20 years. It's now a thriving market economy and is a member of NATO and the European Union. However, there's discontent too at widespread corruption and the current state of Czech politics. But as Václav Havel says, change doesn't happen overnight.
Changes take such a long time. It's so complicated, and it constantly produces new problems. But I guess that's the way it is, isn't it? That's just part of life. History has a tendency to throw up new surprises.
That was Rob Cameron recalling those momentous weeks in Prague. The time is now 6